Have you ever met someone who moves through life like it was built for them? They never chase. They never hurry. And yet somehow everything, people, opportunities, timing, seems to orbit around their presence. They're not loud. They're not lucky. They're certain of what they want, and even more certain that they'll get it. While others waste their energy explaining, apologizing, and hesitating, they simply act. And that is why the world yields to them. Because power doesn't belong to the strongest. It belongs to the one who is unmoved, the one who can stand still while everyone else scrambles for approval. To be unstoppable, you must first understand this. The universe does not reward goodness. It rewards decisiveness. It bends for the one who has no doubt. It obeys the one who does not flinch. Most people will spend their lives asking, is it possible? The unstoppable simply ask, how do I take it? This is not a lesson in motivation. It's a manual for domination. 10 ruthless laws carved from the mind of Machiavelli himself for those who refuse to live as spectators. Because in this world you either command or you are commanded. And once you understand that truth, you stop waiting for permission to win. Clarity is not a virtue. It's a weapon. It is the sharpest blade you will ever hold. And the first thing it cuts is illusion. Most people say they want clarity, but what they really want is comfort dressed as truth. They want to understand as long as it doesn't force them to change. They crave honesty until honesty dismantles the stories they built to protect their weakness. But Machiavelli understood the hidden violence of seeing things as they are. He wrote that men are so simple and so obedient to present necessities that anyone who deceives will always find someone willing to be deceived. That line isn't cynicism, it's anatomy. It describes the human condition. People prefer sweet lies over bitter facts. The few who reject that comfort, the ones who choose to, become something else entirely. They become dangerous. Because once you begin to see clearly, you can no longer be controlled. When you recognize the pattern in people's motives, you stop reacting to their performances. You stop feeding emotional parasites who live off your guilt and empathy. You stop chasing the approval of those who were never going to give it. Clarity ends the trance that keeps ordinary people obedient. It feels cruel because it demands a death. The death of delusion. You begin to realize that half the promises you believed in were just negotiations in disguise. That loyalty often lasts only as long as usefulness does. That morality in the wrong hands becomes a leash. Most people can't face this. They prefer the fog because it's warm. But power lives in the cold where every decision is made without distortion. The unstoppable know this. Clarity is the birthplace of control. When your perception is clean, you can cut through manipulation before it even begins. You stop answering questions designed to trap you. You start dictating the terms of every conversation. You move from defending to directing, from reacting to ruling. Notice the people who hold real influence. They don't speak much, and when they do, every word lands like a command. That isn't charisma. It's clarity. They know exactly what they want and exactly what they'll never tolerate. They waste no energy explaining, apologizing, or proving. To reach that level, you must perform a kind of emotional surgery. Cut the noise. Cut the opinions of those who haven't built anything. Cut the endless analysis that disguises fear as reflection. Clarity is not about seeing everything. It's about focusing on what matters. A blade doesn't need to touch the whole body. It needs to strike the artery. The same is true with your attention. Direct it precisely and the world bleeds for you. And yes, people will call you cold. They will say you've changed, that you've become distant, calculating. What they mean is that you've stopped letting them feed off your uncertainty. You've stopped being predictable, and the predictable are always prey. Do not apologize for your clarity. You are not cruel. You are awake. Let others drown in their endless empathy and confusion. You, on the other hand, will walk through chaos like it's a map only you can read. Because once you see the truth, truly see it, there is no going back. There is only forward, colder, sharper, freer. That is the first law of becoming unstoppable. Clarity is cruelty, and cruelty in the hands of the wise is nothing more than precision. Power that depends on permission can be taken. Power that depends on position can be replaced. But power that is personal, power that comes from who you have become, cannot be destroyed. This is the kind of power Machiavelli respected most. Not crowns, not titles, not armies, but presence. The aura of someone who needs nothing yet commands everything. You've seen people like that. They walk into a room and the atmosphere changes, not because they demand attention, but because they radiate ownership of themselves, of the moment, of reality itself. That is personal power. The kind that cannot be borrowed, copied, or faked. To build it, you must begin with one brutal act, the act of self-defin. Most people are mirrors. They reflect opinions, trends, and moods. They shift to fit the environment, hoping to be accepted by it. But in doing so, they lose themselves, and the world treats them accordingly. Because the world has no respect for those who don't know who they are. The powerful, on the other hand, define their identity like a fortress. They decide who they are and then become it completely. Their values, tone, decisions all align like weapons forged for one purpose. There's no confusion, no contradiction, no performance. Only clarity of being, and clarity when embodied becomes command. This is why you must stop trying to convince people of your worth. Stop arguing for your value. Stop seeking validation from those beneath your purpose. Make your existence a statement that needs no explanation. When your sense of self is absolute, every insult becomes irrelevant. Every rejection becomes redirection. Every failure becomes information, not identity. That is how you make power personal. You remove the middlemen between you and your confidence. You stop needing reputation to feel strong. You stop needing attention to feel real. You stop needing company to feel complete. Once you reach that point, you become unpredictable because no one can threaten you. They can't take what you don't depend on. They can't shame you for choices you've already accepted. They can't lure you with approval you no longer crave. That's why Machiavelli admired rulers who built power from their own mind, not their bloodline. He called it veru, the individual's capacity to shape destiny through will and intelligence. It is the difference between an emperor born in gold and one who forged his crown from nothing. The first has power on loan. The second is power. Making power personal means every victory and every wound belongs to you. You stop outsourcing responsibility. You stop blaming, justifying, or complaining. You take control not because it's easy, but because it's the only way to own your life fully. And yes, it isolates you. True individuality always does. Because when you stop depending on systems, approval, or institutions to validate you, you step into a kind of freedom that terrifies others. They will call you selfish, arrogant, cold. But what they're really feeling is fear. Because your independence exposes their dependence. Making power personal is not about dominance. It's about sovereignty. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need the throne. Because the throne exists wherever they stand. That is the level beyond ambition where you no longer chase power because you embody it. Machiavelli would say the one who masters himself masters all. Others by default. So stop trying to control the world. Control yourself completely and you'll find that the world bends naturally around that gravity. That is how the unstoppable are made. Power is no longer something they reach for. It's something they are. There is a point in the rise of every powerful person when the world stops asking if they'll succeed and starts asking when. That is the moment when victory becomes inevitable. And inevitability is the final illusion of total control. Machiavelli wrote that men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, meaning people don't follow what is true. They follow what appears unstoppable. If you can make your ascent look certain, the world will begin helping you climb out of fear, admiration, or surrender. The aura of inevitability is not built by luck. It's built by consistency, restraint, and psychological warfare. You make progress in silence, but show it strategically. You reveal just enough movement to suggest momentum, just enough confidence to make doubt look foolish. Once people believe in your inevitability, they start aligning themselves with your direction. Not because they understand your plan, but because they fear being left behind by it. That is the secret of influence. People don't follow leaders, they follow certainty. They attach themselves to those who appear chosen by destiny, those who seem guided by something larger than chance. To cultivate this aura, you must master the illusion of smooth inevitability. Even when you're struggling, you move as if your outcome is guaranteed. Even when you're uncertain, you project quiet assurance. You never appear desperate, defensive, or disoriented. Because once others sense panic, the spell breaks. Perception drives momentum. And momentum, once others start believing in it, becomes self-fulfilling. Your confidence infects them. Your calm convinces them. Your composure under pressure becomes evidence of something divine, something greater than mere effort. Machiavelli would call this the theater of power. It is not deceit, it is strategy. You shape the narrative before others can write it for you. Because in the court of public opinion, the appearance of strength is strength. Never reveal uncertainty publicly. Doubt is a luxury for private reflection, not for display. Let the world see you only in control, even when control feels like a whisper inside chaos. And never argue for your inevitability. Let your presence, your pace, and your precision speak it silently. The more you insist, the less they believe. The more you act like destiny, the more they accept it as truth. This is how kings, conquerors, and leaders create the illusion of divine right. They act as if their rise was written before their birth. And once people believe that, resistance feels like rebellion against fate itself. When you cultivate inevitability, you stop fighting for belief. The world begins to rationalize your victories for you. Every success becomes obvious, every move genius, every risk calculated, and soon even your enemies start to hesitate. Because who wants to stand in the way of what cannot be stopped? But understand, inevitability is not arrogance. It's composure under uncertainty. It's persistence disguised as destiny. You earn it through relentless focus, through showing up when others quit, through patience when others panic. You don't need to convince the world that you'll win. You just need to make it impossible to imagine you won't. That's when reality starts to bend toward you, when doors open before you knock, when people begin rearranging themselves to accommodate your rise. At that point, power stops being a chase. It becomes gravity. Because when you move with the energy of inevitability, the world no longer resists you. It yields. Power is not always found in order. Sometimes it lives in controlled disorder, in chaos that obeys only you. The weak crave stability. They want predictability, comfort, and clear patterns. That's why they're easy to control. Once you know what calms them, what provokes them, what pleases them, you own them. But the powerful understand something deeper. Predictability is a prison. If people can read your next move, they can plan against you. If they always know how you'll react, they can manipulate you. Control, then, is not about being rigid. It's about being unreadable. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must learn to be both fox and lion, cunning and forceful, shifting between them at will. That's the essence of calculated chaos. To appear inconsistent, not because you are lost, but because you choose to be unpredictable on purpose. The greatest leaders, strategists, and manipulators all have this in common. They move like storms. You never know when they'll strike, where they'll turn, or how long they'll last. But when they move, they reshape everything. Unpredictability is power. It keeps enemies anxious and allies alert. It makes people hesitate before crossing you because they can't calculate what you'll do if they do. That uncertainty is your shield. Fear doesn't come from what people know you'll do. It comes from what they can't predict. To master calculated chaos, you must first abandon your obsession with always being understood. Let people misread you. Let them think they figured you out, then prove them wrong again and again until they stop trying. Once they stop trying to predict you, you have won. But chaos must always be controlled. This is where fools fail. They mistake impulsiveness for power. They confuse recklessness with dominance. True chaos is never emotional. It's engineered. Every move that looks spontaneous is secretly deliberate. Every surprise is the result of preparation hidden in silence. Think of it like a storm guided by a mind. It appears wild, but every strike is precise. You create confusion not because you've lost control, but because you want others to lose theirs. This is psychological warfare. You make people dance to a rhythm they can't follow. You train them to expect nothing. And in that uncertainty, they become reactive, emotional, sloppy. While they unravel, you remain still, the calm center within chaos. Even in negotiation, unpredictability gives you leverage. If they know you're desperate, they'll exploit you. If they think you might walk away, they'll chase you. If they can't read your intentions, they'll offer more than they planned. Power always belongs to the one who can't be read. Machiavelli warned, "It is better to be impetuous than cautious." But what he meant was not recklessness. It was rhythm. To strike when others hesitate, to disrupt the timing of your opponents until every move they make serves you. The key is balance. Too much chaos, and you destroy your own structure. Too much order, and you become predictable prey. The art lies in dancing between the two. In being chaos with a plan, unpredictability with direction. When they think you're weak, strike. When they think you're strong, wait. When they think they know you, change. Because power is not about being stable. It's about being inevitable. Let them see your chaos, but make sure it's always your design. The storm that obeys no one except its creator. The difference between the powerful and the powerless is not that one avoids loss, it's that one uses it. Everyone bleeds, everyone fails, everyone falls. But only a few understand the hidden architecture of defeat, that every setback carries within it the blueprint for dominance. Machiavelli warned that fortune is fickle. She strikes when least expected. But he also said that the wise man learns to beat her into submission, meaning you cannot stop misfortune, but you can make it serve you. That's the secret of those who rise after ruin. They do not waste time grieving over what happened. They dissect it. They analyze the failure like an assassin studying a target calmly, without emotion, with surgical precision. Loss reveals your vulnerabilities faster than success ever could. It shows you where you were naive, distracted, unprepared. It is brutal feedback written in pain. And those who can face it without pride or panic turn it into intelligence, into leverage. Because power is not built in moments of victory, it's built in moments of collapse. When you realize the world doesn't owe you safety and you decide to build it yourself. When you lose, you have two choices. You can identify as the victim or the architect. The victim mourns what was taken. The architect studies how it was taken and designs a system so it never happens again. That's how empires are born from ashes. Not by chance, by reconstruction. The unstoppable know this deeply. They never truly lose because every failure feeds their evolution. They turn betrayal into information, rejection into refinement, pain into precision. Every insult becomes data, every wound becomes armor. Every ending becomes a redirection towards something stronger. This is what it means to weaponize suffering. But to do this, you must first kill one illusion, the illusion of fairness. You must stop expecting life to reward your effort proportionally. You must stop equating goodness with protection. You must stop waiting for the world to apologize. Power begins when you accept that there will be no justice, only the advantage you extract from what happens. That's why Machiavelli admired those who thrived under pressure. He called it virtue. Not virtue in the moral sense, but excellence under chaos. The ability to bend circumstance through intelligence and will. To look at disaster and say, good, now I see what's real. Because when you lose everything unnecessary, you see everything essential. You see who stays, who betrays, who matters, who doesn't. You see what skills you lack and what illusions you clung to. You see yourself unfiltered, unprotected, pure. And from that you can rebuild something indestructible. When pain becomes purpose, loss turns into leverage. Because every scar then carries information no victory could ever teach you. You start anticipating betrayal instead of being wounded by it. You start building strategies that survive chaos. You start thinking like Machiavelli, coldly, clearly without sentimentality, and soon the world begins to notice. You no longer react. You calculate. You no longer fear loss. You use it. You no longer break under pressure. You sharpen. Because in the end, the unstoppable are not those who never fall. They are those who fall strategically. Every downfall becomes a map. Every failure becomes a foundation. Every humiliation becomes a seed of power planted in silence. That is how the wise conquer the inevitable. They turn tragedy into training. They make loss work for them. Machiavelli would call that true mastery, the ability to turn defeat into design and pain into power. The most dangerous kind of power isn't physical. It's psychological. It's not about force. It's about control through necessity. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He wrote that a wise ruler should always conduct himself so that his people cannot do without him. Dependency is the invisible chain of power. Once someone depends on you for validation, for access, for stability, you own the rhythm of their mind. Dependency creates leverage, and leverage is the currency of control. Most people want to be liked. The powerful want to be needed because being liked is fragile. It can change overnight. But being needed gives you permanence. It forces others to protect your position even when they resent you. So how do you create dependency? First, you make yourself useful. Not through flattery or compliance, but through value. You become the one who delivers results, solves problems, or brings calm. When chaos reigns, you make yourself indispensable, the quiet pillar in every system you touch. Once they rely on your strength, you withdraw slightly, not completely, just enough to let them feel the vacuum. This is the art to give so effectively that your absence feels like pain. Withdrawal turns usefulness into addiction. It reminds people that you are the source of stability, approval, access, or peace. And once they associate you with their comfort, they begin to protect your presence like a survival instinct. Machiavelli would call this possession through influence. It's not ownership in name, it's ownership in effect. You don't need to control people directly when they start controlling themselves to keep your favor. That is true power, the kind that requires no demand, no noise, no force. A single withdrawal achieves more than 1,000 commands. But here lies the art. You must balance between giving and vanishing. If you withdraw too soon, they detach. If you give too long, they take you for granted. The mastery lies in timing, knowing exactly when to disappear so that your absence grows your importance. Think of influence like oxygen. You let them breathe freely, then take a little away, not to suffocate them, but to remind them who provides the air. This is not cruelty. It's architecture. Every empire, every movement, every company is built on dependency. Power is not held by the majority. It's held by those the majority cannot function without. Even in personal relationships, this law reigns supreme. People chase those who make them feel something they can't create alone. They admire those who bring order to their chaos. They become addicted to those who understand their mind better than they do. Once you identify what others crave, security, admiration, direction, mystery, and you become its source, you hold silent authority over them. But never forget the second half of the law: withdrawal. Power decays when overexposed. If you're always available, you become expected. If you're always seen, you become ordinary. If you're always giving, they forget your value. So disappear strategically. Let them wonder. Let them miss your voice, your guidance, your energy. Let them remember that your presence is music, not guaranteed. When you return, they will treat you differently, with hesitation, respect, maybe even fear, because now they know what life feels like without you. The weak depend on attention. The powerful make others depend on them. That's why kings could rule with silence. That's why Machiavelli's prince was untouchable. Not because he ruled through love or cruelty, but because the people's survival was tied to his existence. Create dependency. Then withdraw and watch how power begins to orbit you. Not because you demand it, but because the world can no longer move without you. Reality is not what is true. It is what people believe is true. The powerful have always understood this. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." That is not cynicism. That is a law of human nature. People rarely look beyond appearances. They react to symbols, tone, confidence, and mystery more than to logic or fact. Control what they see, and you control how they act. Control how they act, and you control everything. The weak spend their lives trying to prove who they are. The powerful decide who they will be seen as, never explain it. You can't control the world, but you can control the frame through which the world sees you. And once music, you master the frame. Even lies begin to work like truth. Perception is the currency of influence. You could be brilliant, capable, even noble. But if your image communicates uncertainty, the world will treat you as uncertain. You could be cruel, selfish, or manipulative. But if your image communicates strength and direction, the world will follow. That is why power begins not with action, but with presentation. The way you speak, the way you stand, the silence you maintain. These are not details. They are architecture. They build the invisible palace of your reputation. Understand this. Perception is not decoration, it is armor. Every ruler, every leader, every conqueror wears it. They construct their myth carefully, a balance between fear and admiration. People must never fully understand you. They must sense there is more than what you reveal. Because curiosity breeds influence. Control perception through 3 weapons: mystery, consistency, and projection. Mystery keeps others chasing clarity. When they can't predict you, they invest energy trying to. Their focus shifts from their power to yours. And in that shift, they become followers. Consistency gives your myth weight. Say little but make every word and act align. Repetition turns performance into identity. If you act like a leader long enough, people stop questioning it. They believe it. And projection, the ability to radiate confidence even when uncertain, is the final art. The mind cannot distinguish fully between appearance and reality. If you look sure, you become sure. People will lend you their belief until it turns into your momentum. This is why you must never expose your chaos publicly. Never bleed in front of the crowd. Let your mistakes happen in private. Your rebuilding in silence, and your reappearance in glory. The world respects results, not explanations. You are not required to be real with everyone. You are required to be strategic, because transparency is not strength, it's surrender. Those who show everything lose everything. To control perception is to write your own myth. It is to become a symbol, not a personality. Symbols cannot be argued with. They are obeyed, loved, or feared. And once you reach that level, you no longer chase opportunities. They orbit you. Understand this deeply. People will always project stories onto you. Your only choice is whether you let them write those stories or you write them yourself. That is the essence of command, to decide not only how the world treats you, but why. Because whoever controls perception controls reaction, and whoever controls reaction controls reality itself. Emotion is the easiest way to control a human being. That's why the world is full of people who know how to provoke it. They don't need power, money, or truth. They just need to make you feel. Once you react, you lose clarity. Once you lose clarity, you can be led anywhere. This is how most people live, constantly manipulated by feelings they never questioned. They love when they should analyze. They panic when they should plan. They argue when they should observe. And by the time they realize it, they've already surrendered their power. Machiavelli knew this well. He wrote, "Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. The wise man uses both, but never becomes a slave to either. He understands emotion as a weapon, not a weakness. Detachment is not coldness, it's control. It's the ability to stand inside a storm and never let the storm touch your center. When you are detached, you can think while others drown in panic. You can speak softly while others scream for validation. You can see the entire chessboard while everyone else is busy reacting to one move. Emotion blinds judgment. It makes you exaggerate small threats, trust the wrong people, and defend illusions. That's why the powerful are never impulsive. They wait, they watch, they let everyone else reveal themselves. Because when people are emotional, they show everything, their fears, their desires, their weaknesses. And the one who stays calm learns how to rule them. The world mistakes emotional control for lack of passion. But the truth is the opposite. The detached feel everything. They just don't let it leak out. They know emotion is sacred fuel, and like fire, it must be contained or it burns down everything. To command from logic is to live as a strategist, not a slave. It means you decide what deserves your energy and what doesn't. You stop fighting pointless battles just to prove a point. You stop explaining yourself to those who will never understand. You stop trying to fix people who need their chaos more than your help. Logic gives you the highest form of freedom, the ability to choose your response. The weak are controlled by stimuli. The powerful control their state. And when you can control your state, you can control outcomes. Because every negotiation, every conflict, every opportunity is decided by the one who stays calm the longest. Detachment is not withdrawal. It's dominance disguised as peace. The quiet person in the room often has the most control because silence unnerves the emotional. They mistake it for indifference, but it's actually assessment. You're studying the field while they're showing their hand. This is why you must never reveal your emotions fully. Let people see enough warmth to trust you, but never enough to predict you. Let them think they've figured you out. Then move opposite to their expectations. That's how you keep power. That's how you lead without begging. And yes, detachment will make others uncomfortable, because when you stop reacting, manipulators lose their grip. When you stop giving emotional fuel, the drama collapses. And when you stop needing approval, you become untouchable. Remember, the goal is not to stop feeling. It's to stop being controlled by what you feel. Emotion is a servant, not a master. And when logic holds the leash, power follows. Because in the game of life, those who panic obey those who remain calm. And those who remain calm command. Power does not come from constant presence. It comes from strategic absence. The more people see you, the more they think they know you, the more accessible you are, the more ordinary you become. Familiarity breeds comfort, and comfort kills respect. The powerful understand this instinctively. They appear when it matters, and vanish when it doesn't. They move like ghosts, present just enough to be remembered, absent enough to be mythologized. Machiavelli warned rulers to never let their subjects grow too accustomed to them, because when people think they can reach you whenever they please, they stop valuing what it costs to have you. They start treating your time, your energy, and your presence as resources, not gifts. Distance is not detachment, it's design. It's the art of making people earn proximity to you. When you master distance, something subtle happens. Your silence becomes louder than words. Your absence starts to speak for you. People begin to imagine you to fill in your mystery with fascination and fear. And imagination is far more powerful than reality. Because here's the paradox. The less you explain yourself, the more people obsess over understanding you. The less you appear, the more they wonder where you've gone. And in that wondering, you dominate their thoughts. This is psychological gravity, the force of scarcity. What is rare becomes valuable. What is always available becomes invisible. That's why you must stop trying to be everywhere. Stop being constantly reachable, constantly seen, constantly reacting. Withdraw strategically. Let your energy create anticipation. Let your presence feel like an event, not a routine. When you disappear for a while, the world resets around your absence. The noise quiets. Your name becomes heavier, your return unpredictable, and when you reappear stronger, sharper, quieter, it feels like a storm has entered the room. Distance also protects your clarity. When you step away, you see the game from above. You recognize who is genuine and who only thrives when you're available to use. You discover which relationships are rooted in respect and which depend on your convenience. Withdrawal reveals truth. The ones who panic when you disappear were never connected to you. They were connected to their control over you. The ones who remain patient, who still respect you in silence, those are your allies. Everyone else was a leash. Machiavelli would call this the politics of presence, knowing when to show your face and when to make absence your authority. Because when people can't access you easily, they start to idealize you. And idealization always precedes obedience. Even in warfare, the greatest generals understand the power of retreat. Stepping back is not surrender, it's the gathering of force. Every conqueror knows you can't strike effectively if you're surrounded by noise. Distance is where you sharpen the blade. So, become less available. Let people wait for your attention. Let them earn your response, and when they finally get it, make it precise, calculated, unforgettable. Because distance doesn't make you cold, it makes you commanding. The ones who need constant attention fade into background noise. The ones who master distance become legends. Remember, scarcity builds reverence. The sun disappears each night, and that's exactly why the world worships its return. So withdraw, observe, let them wonder, and when you choose to reappear, make it impossible to forget. That is how the unstoppable control the rhythm of power, not through noise, but through strategic silence. The moment you think you've arrived, you begin to rot. Every empire that ever collapsed, every king who lost his throne, every genius who faded into obscurity, all fell for the same illusion that the climb was over. But the powerful know the climb never ends, because power is not a possession, it's a pulse. It must be fed, refined, and reinvented, or it dies. Machiavelli warned rulers that fortune destroys those who stand still. He said that when the world changes and a man refuses to adapt, he becomes his own downfall. To survive, you must stay fluid, unpredictable, even to yourself. Evolution is the final weapon of power. It is how you outlast envy, betrayal, time, and even your own legend. The unstoppable never settle into a version of themselves. They outgrow it again and again, until even their past fears cannot recognize them. The masses cling to identity like armor. They say, "This is who I am," as if that phrase will protect them. But what they call identity is often just habit, a prison built from yesterday's choices. The powerful destroy that prison regularly. They break their own patterns before the world can. They reinvent their appearance, their methods, their mindset, not because they are lost, but because they refuse to be found. To evolve is to remain untouchable. Once people think they understand you, they begin to predict you. And once they can predict you, they can control you. Change kills that control. This is why evolution feels like betrayal to those who stay behind. When you grow, you stop fitting into the illusions that others built around you. They'll call you arrogant, distant, ungrateful, because your transformation threatens their stability. But the unstoppable don't owe anyone the version of themselves that feels safe to others. They understand that progress demands isolation, criticism, and reinvention, and they accept that with quiet precision. Machiavelli would call this self-preservation through transformation, the art of shedding the skin before it hardens. It is not about chasing trends or pretending to be new. It's about adjusting your form while keeping your core intact, like a serpent, cold and calm, always shedding what no longer serves. Evolution is not chaos, it's strategy disguised as rebirth. It allows you to remain many steps ahead of those who cling to yesterday's rules. While they try to master what you used to be, you're already becoming something else. This is the final law of the unstoppable. Never arrive. Keep moving, keep learning, keep mutating your edge. The moment they think they've understood you, change again. Because permanence is death and transformation is power. Let them chase your shadow while you rewrite yourself in silence. Let them argue about who you are while you build who you'll become next. Let them fear your evolution because fear is respect in disguise. And one day they'll realize the truth. You were never one person. You were an entire evolution disguised as a single name. That is what it means to be unstoppable. To conquer not once, but forever. If this philosophy spoke to you, if you felt that quiet burn of awakening while listening, then remember this isn't motivation, it's transformation. So stay sharp, stay cold, stay evolving. And if you're ready to rise above the ordinary, subscribe not to this channel, but to your own higher self, because this is just the beginning.